Come, spellweavers, reavers, rogues, and men-at-arms, and answer the call of adventure. Pick up your sword, your axe, your spellbook, your bow, your rulebook, and your dice, and join the forces of good in their eternal fight against vile monsters, conspiring min-maxers, horny bards, and blood-soaked murder hobos. Discover the treasure trove of role-playing games here on Rollin Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Good evening, Boneheads, and welcome back to Rollin Bones with Ryan Howard, where we are making old school young again. I'm your host and king of the Boneheads, Ryan Howard, and if we take a quick look at the leaderboards here, yes, I am still the #1 Ryan in the role-playing game industry. It's lonely up here at the top, but I am doing just great. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Something that happened last week that I didn't address, but I just wanted to thank all of you who've supported me. I reached 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So, guys, thank you so much for helping me get to that milestone. I really appreciate it. And, here's hoping that we can push to 2,000, by the end of the year. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see how things go. Anyway, tonight I am going to be joined by my friend Poncho Goblin. I've been looking forward to this. Poncho's not been on Rollin Bones before. He's one of my compatriots over in the Basic Experts Gilded server. So, I'm looking forward to talking with him. We'll be, talking some RPGs, talking about some stuff going on in the RPG Twitter sphere, and watching a little video that was put out earlier today by Professor Dungeon Master. So that's what we're doing tonight. Before we get into that, though, want to remind everyone to like, share, and subscribe. That is how we got to 1,000 in the first place, and that is how we're going to get to 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, however far this rocket ship takes me here. And also want to remind everyone that you can find me on various social media platforms. On X and Instagram, I am at Howard_Ryan Gregg. YouTube is Rollin Bones. Twitch is twitch.tv/RollinBonesRyan. And Substack is rollinbones.substack.com. I am doing a follow-up article on Substack this week. It's a follow-up to my article from 2 weeks ago called The Artificial Gamer. This one is called The Artificial Designer. So that should tell you all you need to know about what this article is going to be about. I think it's going to end up being good, but, we'll see what you guys out there think when you read it. So that's it for, my shilling. Let's go ahead and bring on my guest today, my co-host for the evening. You guys know him and love him. You can find him on Twitter at El Poncho Goblin. He is the one, the only Poncho Goblin. Welcome to Rollin Bones.
Buenos dias. Hello.
Hey.
The manlet king of RPGs has arrived.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, and excited for the show today.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. I'm looking at Rollin Bones kind of evolving into kind of a looser show with, just more, rapid fire topics and things like that. And so I'm glad that you're on here so that we can just kind of talk through some of the stuff that we, talk through in John's Gilded server.
Yeah. Malachi, don't say that. Dang.
Now, Malachi, come on. I've had you on the show twice. Let me bring Poncho on here. Come on, man. Come on.
Yeah, I actually get to talk on like Vic's streams where it's 30 hours of Star Trek. I'm kidding. Vic, I love you.
I'll be honest. I don't know that we'll talk about Star Trek at all on the show tonight. So,
oh boy. All right.
So, to kick things off here, let's take a look at some of the stuff that's been going on in the world of RPG news. And I know we just talked about this person last week, but for the foreseeable future, it looks like this segment of the show is just going to be the Harmony Ginger report, because Harmony's been at it again over in the Twitterverse. And the way I say that, Harmony's not doing anything wrong. Harmony's actually doing the Lord's work here, because this is a rundown of her experience experimenting with one-to-one time, which is cool. You know, these ideas are moving beyond kind of niche circles and spheres, and they're moving into places where folks like Harmony are talking about them, and talking about them in a way that is not kind of drenched in the kayfabe of the bro SR. So in a lot of ways, Harmony is kind of helping to push these ideas to a broader audience, which, you know, we'll get to in a second. But just to go over this, 2 weeks of using one-to-one time observations. Timed events, caravans, festivals, lunar cycles integrate much more smoothly. Less time for encounters to exhaust player resources. That's listed as a negative. And debuffs that heal over time are handled differently. Seems kind of neutral.
Yeah.
Events are much more interesting. A mysterious group meets on the equinoxes. Caravans depart monthly. A full moon doubles encounter chances. Because we are using an in-world calendar exactly like our own, I had all the players write down their character's birthday upon character creation. I don't know what we'll do when they come up, but I thought it would be a fun thing to add. Time pressure. This one may be a positive for some, but this so far is my biggest mental hurdle. It may iron itself out as we acclimate to timekeeping, but my players like to spend a lot of time role playing, which is proving to be somewhat of a hindrance. We had several encounters, 3.5 combats, a short road encounter, and some tavern RP, and we went about 3.5 hours. The end felt pressed for time as the players wanted to finish up what they were doing quickly so they could get back to town. I'm concerned about what this does to the pacing of the game, though this may improve as we get used to the style of campaign. Just to pause on this, because this is something that I noticed in my own game when I started using one-to-one time. Players of the modern ilk are used to just being able to like riff and still get into whatever it was the GM had planned for them. There's this kind of baked in perception that you can just snark endlessly at NPCs from a lot of modern players. And one of the first things to overcome when you introduce this timekeeping aspect is no, if you do that, you're borrowing time from other things that you could get done in the session.
I think it's less than just more. And this, once again, this is coming from a AD&D at the beginning type of guy. Hello there, by the way. It, in my mind, I guess it's more. It gets down to it becoming less game and more role play. I guess if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
As at least with how I've always done everything, it's always been more focused on the game aspect and the mechanics, and less like, oh, tavern RP, less, oh, shopping RP. So I guess it's more of a group dependent type of deal.
Mhm.
And I will say now, though, that with pacing and everything like that, at least for the session, that will get better with time. I can basically guarantee that, because time management is a skill, and newer stuff, it's doesn't seem to be as important, but with older stuff such as Zero E, such as AD&D, it definitely has a premise and focus on that. So it's more of a prevalent aspect.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And yeah, Harmony, this is the Ginger Report. This is what we're doing right now. So, somehow you have now made yourself a permanent fixture of what we're discussing on RPG Twitter. So welcome to the Ginger Report, I suppose. But yeah, I see what you're saying. And I think,
as I say, I don't know if Crossface is watching, but I'm stealing the term time jail.
Yes.
But
But I think this is one of those things. Have When Harmony was on the show, she mentioned that she comes from a background of playing games like Diplomacy, and so having players that are kind of more on the RP side of things and less on the actually engaging with the mechanics of the game side of things is probably a little bit frustrating, and it's a misalignment of expectations. And so that's just something that'll iron out with time, like you said. And then on debuffs, I am running 5e base with exhaustion at 0, which heals at the rate of 1 exhaustion per long rest. Instead of crippling the PC over multiple sessions, exhaustion now can eat their downtime. With stop time, players would need to use magic or pay to heal debuffs, but this gives the players the option of paying with their downtime to remove a debuff. Okay. Players haven't really seemed to get in the downtime yet, since they have mostly been using it to train. A few are doing various other side activities, but so far nothing too interesting. Again, I blame this at least partially on growing pains. That's fair.
Yeah. If you have any magic users in your party, since this is 5e, any sorcerers, any wizards, any warlocks, heavily recommend looking into the magical research stuff.
Yeah.
As that alone will, at least for that player or any player that has a caster at all, that will be a good chunk of downtime.
Yes. Yeah, and unfortunately, part of the issue there is she's running in 5e base. And 5e does not... I'm sure Alchemic Raker or Crafty or Crossface could point to some kind of magical research mechanic that's in 5e core.
Well, there is. It's in the DMG, I'm pretty sure.
It's not a robust one. It's not anywhere near what something like Axe or AD&D or OSE would have, though. So it's one of those things you kind of have to like add on to.
That's fair. Yeah, downtime for that, as well as other quests as well, could also help with downtime. So, like, say you have a fighter, not too sure if level 1 fighter is still veteran in 5e. Knowing 5e, they're probably a hero at this point.
Yep.
But I would argue as well that like taking quests to like help the local guard and stuff like that would not only help in universe kind of expand what's going on there, give more opportunities, as well as just make them fit in better with the where they are staying as well. But
yeah, and then like another thing that downtime can be used for, getting back to some of the stuff that's going on with, spending more time role playing than dealing with encounters. A lot of that role play stuff can be downtime activities, especially anything that has to do with shopping. That's all downtime activity.
If you use a session to shop, you are the worst kind of person. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But
what Harmony's doing here is actually taking these ideas that Jeffro's been using and B-Dubs has been using and Crossface has been using, and she's using them at her own table and talking through them. This is all good. So, this is great. What I wanted to talk about here, though, some of the reactions that we're getting here.
Oh boy, I couldn't read this one because I'm blocked.
Specifically.
Oh boy, my favorite person.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, this is Griff. Griff is the filmmaker behind Secrets of Blackmoor, and to say that Griff is cantankerous is to put it lightly. I'm surprised that I'm not blocked at this point.
Where are the basement notes, Griff? Where are the basement notes? Show them.
Yeah.
But
good. I'm glad that this is already a thing in your game, Harmony, because this was one of the first things that I was just like, wait, we don't have to shop in session anymore?
Yes. Also, if I don't know if Crafty has already brought up to you. I'm sure he will at some point, being the salesman he is. I highly recommend the Wilderness Kit
Oh yeah,
for 5e. It's
yeah.
probably like one of the best supplementary products for it. And it's
Mm.
pretty cheap too. I think it's like $20, which like isn't bad.
Yep.
Uh,
But yeah, Griff. Again, to let people in on things if you aren't already aware, Griff has been extremely hostile to anything bro related, like block on site. Again, Poncho's blocked. I'm surprised I'm not blocked. But Harmony just kind of lays out, this is what I've been doing, experimenting with one-to-one time. And now Griff is open to the idea. And
except his example is not good because it
yeah.
shows that he doesn't understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does not have a good understanding of what one-to-one time actually is. It's not, as I said in Basic Experts Gilded Server, it is not 24 the role-playing game. Even 24 played fast and loose with everything is happening in an hour. So yeah, just putting that out there. But again, this is interesting. Instead of immediately going to the knee jerk of, Griff never says Gary didn't play that way, but Arneson didn't play that way, because Griff would probably argue that at some point Gary Gygax put on Arneson's clothing and pretended to be Arneson. That's the degree to which Gary stole from Arneson. But instead of immediately going to this knee jerk of, well, they never played that way, he's now like considering this idea.
Arneson did in fact play that way.
Yes, Arneson did play that way.
I can guarantee that. Mm-hmm. Also, I think the knee-jerk thing, I hate saying it like this, but it's a fear of what he created, because the bros wouldn't really be a thing if he hadn't put out Secrets of Blackmore.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure even Jeff Rowe said that at one point. So,
But there's this thing going on, and you see this with some other people there, and I'm not going to show his tweets here because I blocked him. I'm pretty sure he blocked me, and I don't like the guy, but there was someone else who was also now magically open to this idea of one-to-one time, despite throwing a hissy fit every time it crossed his timeline before this. But partially we can attribute this to Harmony being a good communicator and being a kind and gentle enough person online to get people to consider ideas that they previously written off. But there's also just like an aspect of, how many times have we tried to tell you this? How many times have we given you an explanation? How many times has, love him or hate him, Gelatinous Rube shot you a link to something explaining how this all works and you've ignored him? How many different ways have we tried to get this message across to you? So, sorry, I talked over you there.
I said, listen, he's been playing for 40 years.
Yeah.
He's been playing wrong for 4 years, but he's still been playing for 40 years.
Yeah. I don't know. This is just interesting to me, how suddenly magically, these ideas are palatable now. And, as a proponent of these ideas myself, and as someone who is interested in seeing role-playing happen, this is a positive. It's good that people are now thinking about it. It's just like, why did it take you this long?
Yeah. I've more or less been running Traveler this way for years.
Yeah.
And Curse of Yig actually has a interesting comment as well, because that is a part of RuneQuest. I think that was even in the first edition, where it's characters go on an adventure once a season or anything, and then everything in between the adventures is pure downtime advances in real time. So, yeah.
Well,
I mean,
even
you build out your character's life in that game, so also understandable.
And this is something Chaosium did a lot of in their early work, because even like Pendragon, a full Pendragon campaign is like a multi-generational campaign going through an entire lineage of like a knight's family. So
Oh yeah, no, it's a similar case, at least with the earlier Call of Cthulhu stuff, because I have a copy of on my shelf, but which is behind me. I have a copy for Shadows of Yogg-Sothoth for Call of Cthulhu Second Edition, and it's like, yeah, no, this will not be really the same characters between everything. This will take place over the course of like basically 5 years in game. And it's like,
yeah,
and it's like just a bunch of people trying to figure out this like conspiracy to summon an eldritch god. So yeah, pretty neat.
Yeah. So that's Twitter. That's what I wanted to talk about over there. This has been your Ginger report for the week. Tune in next week to find out what Harmony said on Twitter. Before we move on to the next topic and watch some of this Professor Dungeon Master video, a little bit of Kickstarter drama going on as well. There was some talk about this in the Gilded server. Kind of fill everyone in on what's going on with this Questing Beast Ben Milton Kickstarter, where there's been a little bit of dust kicked up.
Yeah, there's been some dust kicked up from that. Basically, 1,000-Foot View is Knave Second Edition, funded quite some time ago. It already had some drama just because there was a random addition of shipping charges in the middle of the Kickstarter, which was not there originally. And so that already had a little bit there. But then it came out that basically before finishing up the print order for the Kickstarter backers print copies, apparently they did a small print run of the premium edition books, which were like the fancy leather cover ones, and sold those at GaryCon. And it just made a lot of backers kind of mad because they're the backers. They should be the ones getting priority. Why our random con attendees now have this book, but people that have waited like basically a year don't. Because I'm pretty sure it's been nearly a year now, which is kind of nuts.
Yeah.
But
especially for a game that also barely has rules.
86 pages. I'm pretty sure.
86. That's not a book.
86 digest size pages. Grant, I think I will give him a little bit of a benefit of doubt because he has one artist doing all of the art, and it's Errol Otis. So he tends to take a while, but
he does. I also have one artist working on my book, and I will tell you guys, it's not going to take that long. But yeah, like there's lots of kind of weird gray areas when it comes to Kickstarter, and this is why stuff like this interests me. I just, as you guys know, wrapped up my first Kickstarter campaign. There's a lot of kind of thorny ethical issues around having taken money from people to produce a product. There is something owed to those people who were willing to sacrifice their money for something that doesn't yet exist. And this is why I got so mad at Matt Colville raising millions of dollars for a game that doesn't even have half of a draft written. There's this expectation of like timely delivery, and that you are going to make sure that your backers are taken care of, and that you are going to deliver a product to them. Yeah, it'll take a little bit because you're producing this thing and they're helping you produce it. There's this expectation that they're going to get it first. They're going to get something that's unique because they're investors. And when you violate that expectation, even though it's just like a perception that has been violated, that's still a failure on the part of the campaign creator because you didn't communicate clearly to your backers. somewhere along the way, something was lost in translation.
The weirdest part has been some people have seen some of the reactions though on the Questing Beast Discord, and one of them was just one guy basically spamming over and over, Kickstarter is not a store. It's like okay, but still that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
So but yeah, that whole thing, I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens because I mean, love him or hate him, Milton did have a fair amount of goodwill, especially from Maze Rats and Knave first edition. So it's, I don't know. I think it's more of a failure on Hearst's part than Milton's, but that's just me because I'm pretty sure he's the one that's running the actual like printing and distribution.
Yeah.
But still,
Yeah, and it's from the way it sounds like that Hearst has been running things from a customer service perspective, you know, and this is someone who is a sales professional saying this, even though I've only got one Kickstarter campaign under my belt, you don't start screaming at your customers like that. Even if they're not, you know, even if you've tried to communicate and they're not understanding it or they're not getting it, even if they're in the wrong, so to speak, you don't talk to your customers that way, because then you show to your customers that basically, you know, they're expendable to you. You be kind to the people that are helping you out, that are paying your bills. And this situation, it doesn't even sound like any communication was done to, you know, clear the air on this.
basically no one even knew it was happening. It just like
Yeah.
came out in an update post on the Kickstarter page. Everyone's like, wait, what? And not only that, it's customer ill will, and that will come back to bite both of them in the future, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Just because people be like, oh, they did that, I might not want back anything from them after that, or something like that. And yeah, so
Yep.
they did it to themselves, so I can't feel too bad.
Yeah, and like, you know, Malachi says in chat here, Kickstarter's not a store, but it's a pre-order system. That's how people use it now. And yes, if you take the time, this is like 10-year-old analogy here. If you take the time to go into GameStop and put in the pre-order, you expect to get that game pretty quickly. I know nobody does that anymore, but like,
yeah, especially
folks,
since Kickstarter's been like that since like 2015 even.
Yeah.
That's not even a new thing. Because people are expecting, at least even when they back at that point, a partially finished product, which is why companies like Free League, as soon as the Kickstarter, like before the Kickstarter even ends, they're offering quick start rules or alpha PDFs, or even like in the case of Shadow Dark, for example, that was like 90% done before the Kickstarter even ended. Like, if I remember right, most of Kelsey's issues were with her printer or in like distribution stuff, but still.
Yeah, like, you know, to let everyone know on my campaign, my draft is done for my part of Nighthaven, and Wonky's is pretty much done as well. It's about to go to the editor, and then Wonky's working on art. That's where we were when we started the campaign. You know, that's what people expect now. So
yeah. Are you the guts half or the glory half? Yeah, PEG has their books written but not play tested. That is also correct. Like, you get a full book PDF with any Pinnacle Kickstarter nowadays, and then they just do like edits. Which, if I remember right, I don't think the Horror Companion had many, but I might be wrong.
Yep. Listen, King Yellow, we use Google Docs so that we can work together, all right? And because I hate using Microsoft Word. Like, I'm sorry, we're gonna use Google Docs.
Use LibreOffice and then TeamViewer to work on it. I'm kidding.
So that's it for kind of the drama talk. Do you want to take a look at this Professor Dungeon Master video here?
Sure.
Every time I talk about the professor, it seems like people, I won't say enjoy, but they watch, certainly.
That's fair.
I think I upset his audience sometimes, but and again, to let people know, I don't hate Professor Dungeon Master. I have a lot of critiques of the direction in which his content has gone recently. He and I don't exactly see eye to eye on game philosophy anymore. But Dan has been very supportive of me personally. He actually posted the link to my campaign in his Facebook page. So nothing that I say about him is out of a position of malice, because he has been very kind to me over the years. That being said, I do have critiques of his ideas. But this episode it's a little bit different. So let's get into this and talk through some of it.
Oh, we're not gonna have the ad spot at the beginning that made me cringe.
No.
Okay.
that will get us off on a tangent that could take up the rest of the episode.
Be the dragon. Feel the dragon.
Rock the dragon. All right, so let's take a look at this.
About all things role-playing games, and today we're going to talk about how to make an engaging opening that grabs your players from the start and won't let go. When it comes to role-playing games, my motto is less exposition, more demolition, and I'm going to show you how I do it with 3 different role-playing games today on Dungeon Craft.
All right, we're going to skip over the intro.
RPG newsletter at the link below.
When I was 14 years old, I saw the original Dune in movie theaters, and the exposition began before the film when we were handed a glossary of terms and characters. This is a movie so complex, it needed a cheat sheet. The film begins with a static shot of Princess Irulan explaining the history of the Dune universe, and she goes through 10,000 years of history, the Emperor's Spice, Spacing Guilds, Folding Space, the Fremen, Arrakis, and Dune. And we're shown none of these things. We don't see a single spaceship. She just tells it to us. Then, after nearly 2 minutes of talking, we see the credits, and they go on for a few minutes. Compare that with the modern Dune. 2 minutes in and they show us the Fremen battling the Harkonnens on Arrakis. There are explosions. It's exciting. And it's very instructive for game masters. I too have started with overlong description.
Okay, before we get into that, Dan is approaching this topic with a very narrative focus. Let's just put that out there. Dan is approaching this in a narrative way. He is not wrong about his ultimate point. His ultimate point here is you don't want to bore your players with overlong exposition.
Yeah. Don't lore dump.
Yeah, you don't want to lore dump. However, everything that he's going to say around this is framed by the narrative side of role-playing games. So I'm going to let him talk for a little bit more, and then we can kind of dig more into this.
All right.
To the point where one of my players once stopped me and said, "Can we just have the Reader's Digest version of this?" Game masters are natural world builders, but after 40 years of running these games, I've discovered players don't play my game because of the worlds I create. They play because they want their characters to do cool things. So it behooves us as game masters to get to those cool things as soon as possible. Less exposition, more demolition. On a recent Runehammer podcast, link below, Hanker and Fernale advises, be impatient. Get to the good part. Things like characters meeting each other, characters finding out about a bad situation, characters finding that initial clue. All that can be montaged in just a few lines of tightly crafted box text. Get to the confrontation ASAP. That doesn't mean you...
I don't like that. Prep addiction is a hell of a drug, guys.
Yeah.
It once again, I agree with the overall premise.
Mhm.
Is just the way he's word. I come from like an emergent storytelling, pure sandbox type of play. It's why I'm such a big fan of Traveler. It's why I'm such a big fan of Kevin Crawford's work. It's why I had such an interest in White Box and Zero E. The yeah, Sly Blue Demon. He did just say don't lord dump, but have box text. That is entirely correct. And like, so with the lore dump component, with all that, that can pretty much be resolved by one simple thing: have your players actually read the rule book.
Yep.
There, boom, done. And with the lore and everything, aside from stuff that they should basically just know from reading the book, they can just find out in play. Like a good example, John from Terminal Goblin Games, he was explaining to us that at first, when he first started his campaign that's been long running, it was all just like they knew the name of the town and like the local woods, and it's been going for so long. It's like, yeah, no, they know the whole continent, they know who the ruler is, and it gradually built up over time through emergent play because it came up during play. Having it just be box text is kind of but that's a whole other thing.
The easiest way to get your players to the interesting stuff is to start with, you are in this town, here is your map, where do you want to go?
Yeah. No, exactly. And in my opinion, even with just the town map, that can be great, as well as just with like a small scale hex map as well.
Yeah.
Something like a 7 hex map, just all going around one. And that's all you need to basically start off.
Yeah.
You can do the you meet in a tavern thing, but I mean, whatever.
Yeah. But even for modules, and again, saying this as someone who makes modules and is selling modules, even with a module, yes, there is information about the goings on that kind of, are framed around what this module is. The end of the day, though, when you open up Corpse Walk and when you start playing, yes, there's going to be an explanation of things that are going on in the city of Nighthaven, but your players will start just by walking through the gates of the city and interacting with the city guard. And then they'll have an entire district of the city to explore and do what they want to in. And there's things going on around them, but it's primarily focused on how are the players going to interact with the things that have been set up kind of around here. And that's just from the perspective of someone who is running a published product. If you are not doing that, if you're just running a game for your friends, literally you just need a map and tables.
Yeah. And even then, like with even just the meeting up or just entering the city, they can figure out what's going on literally from your description. Like you walk through the gates, it's like, oh, you see a group of beggars going about. It's like, oh, this is a small town. That shouldn't really be a thing. What's going on there? Stuff like that. Or like, hey, there, you can hear a fight like happening at an inn right within the gates. And it's just, it goes and becomes a part of everything as they're actually playing the game.
Yeah.
It's not just box text.
Yeah.
Sorry, that.
So let's hear a little bit more about what Dan recommends here.
Always need to start with combat. It means you should begin in medias res, in the middle of things. Within 5 minutes of the game starting, I try to establish a clear objective, establish the stakes, and a time limit. Otherwise, your game may suffer from SAG, slow-ass game. The story I told about my players saying, can we have the Reader's Digest version, I've mentioned on this...
Not to belabor this. Why do you, the GM, have to establish the objective?
You shouldn't, at least in my opinion. The players
Yeah.
should do that. The players establish the objective. The GM is the one that establishes stake and time,
Mm-hmm.
and the world simply reacts to whether they achieve that objective or not. That's how I view it. But
I agree 100%. Your players tell you what they want to do, and you tell them, all right, it will take this long. You have to, go here to do this, and here's some of the people who are trying to prevent you from doing this.
Channel before, and some commenters have said it was cruel, but I actually appreciated that advice, because here's the thing about SAG. It's kind of like body odor or halitosis. You're the last person to know about it. SAG symptoms include players looking at their phones, players not showing up at the last second, and campaigns that die of attrition after just a few sessions. And before you clickety-click in the comments, it's tough for you as the game master to gauge if your game is sagging, because the game moves much faster for the game master than any of the other participants. There are a million.
I actually don't agree with that at all.
Mm-hmm. It should be moving at the same pace for everyone.
Well, and I have thought that a game is moving slowly, and it turned out the players were perfectly happy for it to go that pace. And I've also had games where I have given control over to the players and said, you guys decide what to do, and still they were on their phones or didn't show up. Now, that was a problem with my players. Yeah, that just happens sometimes, but these things don't necessarily indicate that there's a problem, like from the GM side of things. Sometimes it's just the bad players, but
sometimes it's just players. It's the hobby as a medium is not something for everyone, and that's something I have found abundantly clear with my group of immediate friends. I'll give an example. I'm not going to name names because I'll nearly dox myself, but basically one of my very good friends, he plays a ton of board games, and every now and then will play a war game with me. Hates tabletop RPGs. Tried a tabletop RPG once, basically had a whole spiel of what's the point of this, and everyone else is like, we have to actually figure that out ourselves and like do something. He's like, this is dumb. And it's like, it's not a medium that's for everyone. So, yeah. And going off of Rex Teal's comment, like many Traveler fans, I prefer to sound like a radio play. In seriousness, Tight Like a Movie, I also kind of disagree with that, because that, at least to me, it sounds like, it should be scripted, like the outcome should be known, which one of the key points of RPGs as a hobby, as a game, is that the outcome isn't necessarily known, regardless of what is the players are doing. So,
well, and having a game be tight like a movie, that gets into some of the stuff that Raker and I were talking about last week. When you start chopping things out just to like quote unquote improve the pacing, you start taking options away from your players. Role-playing games are not movies, so they can't be treated like the same medium as a movie. So like when you take things away from the players in the name of tightening up the pace, you're taking away things like making elaborate plans to, like take out a bigger group of bad guys than you normally would be able to. You're basically montaging things that should be planned out or should be played out in role playing. You can't run mediums like each other. Video games are not movies. Hideo Kojima, and role playing games are not movies. They're different mediums, so you have to treat them differently. I don't think you can really expect an RPG to play like a movie.
especially since once you start cutting out stuff, not only does that remove options, but also removes, once again, this goes back to the idea of emergent storytelling in an emergent world. It removes more information that the players could learn about the world and could then later on use to their advantage.
Yep.
So,
million things that are being thrown at you at all times. Whereas if you're a participant, you may be waiting 3, 4, 5, 6, even 10 minutes to take your turn. So you want to get everyone into the game and involve all your players
can I
as soon as
comment on
possible.
that real quick?
I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
The idea of, oh, it's my turn is kind of dumb. And the 5, 6, 10 minute to take your turn thing, in my opinion, it all stems from the everything is in-turn combat mentality. And yeah, no, that once again, that applies to a very specific crowd.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I like side initiative, or if you run classic Traveler, all at once initiative, because fun times. That's not an issue in those games. So I don't know. I think that's a modern game mindset.
I'd agree with that.
You 3 ways to do this with 3 different game systems. We're going to start with my fantasy scenario, Macbeth. Scotland, 1056 AD. It is a time of darkness. Scotland is under attack from without and within. The treacherous Thane of Cawdor has conspired with the evil orcs to overthrow good King Duncan. Determined to protect your king, you, the Thanes of Scotland, prepare to meet your enemies on a rain-soaked battlefield. Cut to a blasted heath, lightning, thunder, and 3 gnarled witches chanting around a cauldron.
Double, double, toil and trouble, fire, burning cauldron, bubble, by the flicking of our thumbs. Something wicked this way comes.
Cut to
H has
a
not
field
been
of battle, a fog.
Age has not been kind to Matt Mercer.
No, and this is like Sly Blue Demon makes a good point here. Isn't that just an intro that you would send to the players before you even play? This is the Matt Colville problem. When I talk about his video on like showing what the villains are up to, where he basically says that your role-playing sessions should include Zed and Rita Repulsa and Goldar talking about how they're going to kill the Power Rangers. If your players aren't there for it, they don't see it happen. They don't know it happens, because then you're dealing with, issues of meta knowledge and metagaming and stuff like that. Unless it's like an omen or a dream that is appearing to a player, there's no reason to like have the players see a cutscene ever.
Thunder Moose's comment. Trying to skip the cutscene by slapping the X card.
Yeah, triangle.
But yeah, like all of that can be resolved once again by reading the book, or just sending them a blurb before you start playing. Just be like, hey, here's where we're starting off. Here's what it's like. Bada bing, bada boom. Done. It doesn't have to be a whole spiel, but also you don't need to have like a whole like, oh, we need like something happening as soon as they get. It's like, no, it's a world. Is there crazy shit happening all around the world at all times? Pretty much, yeah. How much of it do you actually see?
Right.
And game worlds are very similar. So,
and I'm not going to continue playing because I think you guys might like die of cringe if I do. But what he suggests here is, and this is how his module Macbeth goes. You start in the middle of this combat, and you start on one specific side of the combat. I understand that's how he wrote his module. That's not a good way to write a module. To like give the players the experience of actually playing the game, you give them the information that these are the factions. This is like the lore information. This is the world that your players occupy. Here are your players. Who are you going to interact with? What side are you going to ingratiate yourself with? What side are you going to end up like siding with, if any side? You might even decide to be a third party in this, or pit both sides against each other. Or so, how are you going to interact with these factions? And how are you going to then build up an army to ultimately end up in this mass combat? Instead of just, here, we're going to stick you in the middle of this army. Welcome to the first chapter of Armor. Like, that's, again, to me, that's not how a role-playing game should be played.
Mm-hmm. I do have, since you're not going to continue on, the second example he shows is from Massive Nyarlathotep for Call of Cthulhu. And the entire point of that section is like, yeah, just change the module. And it's like, well, no duh. So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to skip over the Blade Runner example, but we'll do the Call of Cthulhu example here.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you mentioned it. So we'll take a look at this.
All right.
Scenario to begin. Now let's take a look at another genre, horror, with Masks of Nyarlathotep. This scenario was written by Lynn Willis and Larry DiTilio, who worked on the He-Man show back in the 1980s. And this is the way it officially begins. In early January 1925, one of the investigators receives an urgent telegram from an old friend, Jackson Elias, who says he's got information about the Carlisle expedition. The book says, give the chosen investigator the handout titled What You Know About Your Friend Jackson Elias. Once the investigator is alerted, he should put together the requested team. Now, this is supposed to be how the adventure begins. What actually happened one of the times I ran this scenario is the investigator I gave that packet to, they decided not to contact the other investigators. They were going to do research by themselves. Another group I ran this for was obsessed with finding guns. I told them, you don't have a gun because you're an antiquarian and you're an archaeologist. But they insisted on going on a side quest to somehow obtain an illegal Tommy gun. But these
Tommy guns were not illegal in the 20s. You could literally order them by mail.
You can buy a Thompson submachine gun from the Sears and Roebuck catalog in the 1920s.
Yes. And okay, his first example, that's just the dumb player being like, hey, I'm just going to do this myself. It's like, there are other people here, my guy. And with the second one, it's like, cool, give them guns. Because a lot of stuff in Mass, especially the old version, doesn't really care about getting shot by guns. So, cool, they have guns. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but that's just me.
Yeah, it's like, I understand, in Call of Cthulhu, there are a lot of things that can't be harmed by guns. There are things that can. So like you run up against some human cultists, you can mow them down if you want to. But
I'm not going to say what they're actually called in the original Mass because you actually might get removed off YouTube, but yeah. There is that, and it's very effective in stopping rituals part way through. It's almost like Indiana Jones used weapons for a reason, and also why people defending the cultists use weapons for a reason. But yeah, once again, it's just something you can account for or not, and it can just be fun. Yeah. Exactly. With Dunder Moose, let them have the reins. And Rex Steel then still be used as tools for shooting various objects. Yes, as well. Yeah. Like, you see like this glowing relic from across the room, and they're just gonna shoot it to destroy it. Cool. Roll shooting.
But also, your players have decided that to prepare for this investigation, they need certain items. And so they're going to pursue those items. They're just like, they're playing role-playing games correctly.
Yeah.
I don't know why you're making it so hard to obtain something that was very easily obtainable in this time period, but
There's literally a whole section on buying guns in the source book for the 1920s for Call of Cthulhu Second Edition. There's like a tiny little subsection on it.
Yeah, and just again to satisfy my particular picadillos here, to let those of you who don't know about this know, the reason why Tommy guns became so ubiquitous amongst gangsters was because of a guy named Two Gun Louis Altieri, who was part of Al Capone's Chicago outfit. He was a rancher. He owned a cattle ranch in Montana. The Thompson submachine gun was developed right at the very end of World War I. A bunch of them were produced. Very few actually saw combat in World War I. So there's all of these surplus guns and basically no use case for them. So Thompson marketed them to ranchers. Louis Altieri is a rancher. So he is getting all this marketing material about this automatic weapon. And so he buys up a bunch of them and just starts like passing them out to their triggermen. Is like, hey, look at this thing that you can shoot out of a car window if you need to. So like they were very easy to get a hold of.
Yeah, makes sense. Especially since surplus would also drive down the price.
Yeah.
Make it pretty cheap. So, yeah, I don't know why the whole thing, well, they shouldn't have guns. No. Just let them have guns, and if it makes some stuff easy, make it easy.
Yeah.
It's not a big
Players
deal.
are
Sorry.
But yeah.
completely normal when compared to this guy on Reddit. The Game Master writes, one of my players held down and executed Jackson Elias. Once again, proving my point. And knowing all this and benefiting from my 4 decades of role-playing experience, I would now begin the Mask of Nyarlathotep like this. You are staring into the dead eyes of your friend, Jackson Elias. His throat has been slashed ear to ear. He's in a spreading pool of his own blood. Here's what you know about your friend, Jackson Elias. The rest of you, what are you doing? Now the scenario involves...
Okay. So it was a problem for one of the players to hold down and execute Jackson Elias. And you propose to have Jackson Elias be dead at the beginning of the session.
Even if the players kill Jackson Elias, like, who's to say they can't just go to his home or search his office or whatever?
Yeah.
And find everything they need there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, it is murder hoboism, which is always something. But even then, who's to say they can't just find stuff in his office if he's dead? It'll be more difficult to piece together, but yeah.
Yeah, like, it's not a
can't
problem.
kill him, but I can, yeah.
It's not a problem for you, the game master, if your players do something stupid. Again, like this is the whole thing with player agency. That's not your problem. That's their problem.
Especially with Call of Cthulhu. Call of Cthulhu is the epitome of it's not my problem if the players do something stupid.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, you wanted to cast a spell and you accidentally summoned a eldritch horror? Cool. Tough shit.
Mm-hmm. But like, this is advice to all of you dungeon masters out there. Like Poncho said earlier, prep is a hell of a drug.
It's a hell of a drug.
Just release it. You release that responsibility. That is no longer, it's not your concern.
It's not of our time.
It's not your concern if, the players aren't pursuing, quote unquote, the main objective, because if they're not pursuing it, it's not their main objective. It's not your concern if they kill an important NPC or, do something. If they alert the guards when they were supposed to be sneaking around, that's their problem. You just play in response to what they do. That is your responsibility as a GM. You arbitrate their decisions. You consult the rules when you need to. You roll the dice for the bad guys, and you react to what the players do. That's all you need to do.
There was a good synopsis of that I read somewhere in the blogosphere like 10 something years ago. And basically, it comes down to players are proactive, the GM is always reactive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep. There you go, Dunderboos. Give them a world, tell them to conquer it, then make it nigh unconquerable and see how they handle it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like in the case of Call of Cthulhu, 1920 Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
So yeah, that's Professor Dungeon Master. Again, his and I think we both agree on this. His ultimate conclusion of not lore dumping on the players, not burdening them with a whole bunch of like boring backstory, that's correct.
Yep.
The problem is it's still framed around this idea of the GM controlling a narrative, which is not at all what a GM should do.
No. GM is simply just reacting to the players and occasionally being basically the world around them. But yeah.
So yeah. Kind of, moving on to other topics, as we were preparing for this, you were talking about some of the games that you run or have been reading recently.
Mm-hmm.
And one that you mentioned was Traveler, because you are obviously a big proponent of classic Traveler.
Yes.
To once again kind of make a dirty admission as a gamer, I've never played Traveler in any iteration. I would love to. I just haven't had the chance to.
So, if for a new person getting into Traveler, if you don't want to deal with classic Traveler, just because I know it has like various incarnations, like Facsimile Edition, Traveler book, the 81 booklets, the 77 booklets. If you were to just get into Traveler, I would honestly argue Mongoose 1E and GURPS Traveler are actually solid starting points, as much as I talk crap about Mongoose 1E. But those are solid. And then when you go full Traveler Autismo is when you can truly get into the depths of crazy stuff like T5 and Mega Traveler.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've been a fan of Traveler for a long time because I guess a little bit of background. I started off like all my TTRPG stuff when I was in middle school. I think I was 11. And my buddy found a copy of his dad's AD&D first edition books in his attic. And we just started going to town playing 1E Ravenloft as with myself as the GM. And then later on, when I was in high school, was when I started branching out and I found Traveler and basically fell in love with it. And it's just something about how it takes that emergent play of AD&D and 0E, which I've been doing a lot of 0E stuff lately as well. Hence why I keep referencing it. And it just cranks all of that to 11. Rex Teal, how's GURPS Traveler compared to the rest of GURPS? GURPS Traveler is actually, it runs very tightly. GURPS Traveler is actually based in GURPS 3rd edition, not 4th edition, and it specifically mentions to use GURPS Lite, not the full book. And it has a lot of its own rules for space travel, a lot of its own rules for a good chunk of the game, honestly. And it also is the most, if you want to play in the Third Imperium, it's also the most cohesive and coherent version of Traveler. Because otherwise, if you play, say, Traveler New Era, you get fun stuff like the virus, which everyone absolutely hated. Or if you play T5, you have funny mechanics like the flux die, which I still have no clue how it works. at all. It's a mystery mechanic to me.
Now, the thing about Traveler that's always fascinated me, and I know this is like just one aspect of the game, the way that like character creation is basically a gamble. That's fascinating to me. That's something that I think is really cool.
That's an older Traveler thing for sure. You can still die in character creation in Mongoose 1E and 2E and the newer ones, but it's considered an optional rule.
Yep.
The T5 Flux die is a different beast, Malachi. Mongoose 2E, it does have the Boon Bane system that is basically advantage disadvantage that adds like a third die. The Flux die is funny because depending on context, it can either be a positive or a negative modifier, but you're still adding this die, and then it also leads to like different outcomes. Also, Shane, we don't talk about T20. T20 is no, that doesn't exist. I don't know what you're talking about. But Traveler is also what kind of led me into getting into BattleTech, and I got honestly into it more seriously once I joined the Basic Experts Gilded, just because I had people like Shane in the comments, Crossface and Crafty kind of egging me on. There's like, get more into BattleTech. I was like, cool.
You need more plastic mechs.
No, I'm getting a 3D printer for that. Screw Catalyst. They can kiss my ass.
Yeah, not giving money to Catalyst is probably a good thing at this point.
I know this game because of a plushie. I don't know how much of that drama you know, but it's something to follow.
I know a little bit. I don't play BattleTech. Again, just haven't gotten into it, but I am an avid viewer of Razor Fist, so I am familiar with some of the BattleTech specific drama.
Yes, Shane, FASA BattleTech, when skidding rules made sense and taking partial cover was actually a worse thing than just being out in the open. Well, somewhat depends. But yeah, it's a whole thing. Any specific questions with Traveler that you have?
No specific questions. I do. Another thing that I admire about Traveler is that it leans more into kind of that like gritty sci-fi that I feel like gets overlooked. You know, kind of the more Star Wars style sci-fi of like these ships are built for utility. I guess Alien is probably more a better example than Star Wars, even like, you know, these kind of like junky tramp freighters that are trucking through the galaxy and everything that you're basically like blue collar workers who occasionally like run up against aliens and stuff like that. That's an interesting thing to me from a sci-fi perspective. And I know Traveler can be played multiple different ways.
It can, and if you want specifically that, Hostile by Zozer Games is right on the money. It's a Traveler clone, but there's no such thing as jump drives, basically. As far as I'm aware, it's like very limited jump capacity. And it's the immediate star system. But that's relatively true. Over time, Traveler has become like more of, I guess, a space opera type. I always compare Old Traveler, because Old Traveler, you can definitely see that, something like Firefly was definitely inspired by it. Whereas the newer Traveler stuff, you start to get the feeling of it inspiring media such as Legend of the Galactic Heroes, for all my weebs out there.
I'm familiar.
Yes. And a good example of this, as I covered it a bit ago, but it was some of the differences alone just between Starship stuff in 77 Classic Traveler and 81. 77 Classic Traveler, the way the ship encounters are set up, the way that ship combat works, everything like that completely assumes small ships. I'm pretty sure I just posted a shitpost meme about it somewhere. So if you're pulling that up, that would be pretty funny. But because the encounters in 77 Classic Traveler, you're most likely encounter stuff like pirates near starports where there are more people. But once you go to A1, suddenly all the pirates and everything bad is in the reaches, because it's assumed that more people, more traffic, navies, police. And it's kind of funny just to see how it has slowly morphed over time. Especially with, so as much as Mark Miller denies it, I do think the critical hit tables in 81 Classic Traveler were partially inspired by Star Wars. Because one of the options on it is to have your ship explode in a ball of fire. And guess what happened a lot in Star Wars?
Yep.
Ships exploding a ball of fire. So, yeah, it's a whole thing. And I'm also a big proponent of Mega Traveler as well, which is in my opinion, the unloved redhead stepchild of Traveler that does not get as much love as it kind of deserves. That's just me.
And then, just as we're kind of closing out here, I think what we'll need to do at some point, when I bring you back on, we'll need to do an entire episode dedicated to Traveler, maybe even like a reading of one of the recommended Traveler books.
Oh boy, I have plenty. I think I have like at least half of Mark Miller's CDs. So yeah.
Awesome. But the other game that you were telling me, and this is one that I am not only more familiar with, but extremely familiar with, you are going back and rereading SWADE, Savage Worlds Adventures Edition.
Yes, that is mostly because of the recent-ish release of the Horror Companion and the soon release of the Sci-Fi Companion. In my opinion, SWADE, especially... Wait, what was Dunner Moose's Poncho Goblin Traveler as Macris riffs? Yeah, Traveler is my riffs. Rex Steel, I'll do a read through of Mega Traveler. We'll be here for hours. I'll bring up the 80-page errata document. Don't worry. I'm not even joking. It's 80 pages.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
Love when two people have completely different layout software in the 80s. It works so well. But yeah, I've been rereading a lot of SWADE, mostly because of the Horror Companion, mostly because of Sci-Fi Companion coming out soon. The Horror Companion I was actually very excited about, because I don't know why I have a hard time running pulpy stuff in BRP based systems like Call of Cthulhu. And I always found more, I guess, pulpy systems like SWADE and Amazing Adventures to be kind of better for it if my players want like an Indiana Jones type of thing.
Yeah.
And I just love SWADE. It basically fixed everything I found wrong with Explorers Edition chase rules. Yeah. And it cleaned up in a way that's pretty nice, in my opinion. Even if it is very much like, I hate the whole like GNS theory bullshit, but it is very much like a game.
Yeah.
Like it feels like you're playing a game, but you know what? Nothing wrong with that.
Right. Yeah, I also hate GNS. I will not go down that tangent right now because we're talking about happy things. Saying that simulationists have brain damage, Ron, really? Like, take a look at these. Take a look at the kind of people who run things now and tell me that it was simulationists that have brain damage. Come on.
Yeah. No, Dundermoose GNS is cancer. That's all you need to know. It is a form of cancer. But yeah, I agree with Yig. Savage Worlds combat is very, very well done. I actually recently also picked up I went to a semi-local game store, had to go a few cities over, and I picked up the Superpowers Companion.
Yeah.
Finally. So I'm not even a big supers guy, but I was like, I'll give it a shot. So
Savage Worlds does supers really well, especially kind of the low to medium powered supers.
Yeah.
And then I am a Deadlands lover and appreciator. That's primarily what I play in Savage Worlds, and it, Sixguns have never felt better.
New Deadlands or classic?
I have dabbled in classic Deadlands. I really like SWADE Deadlands though. I think it works really well.
See, I'm kind of with SWADE Deadlands. I think is a little more cleaner, just from a mechanic standpoint.
Yep.
It's very nice. I don't know why I'm pointing at my shelf like a dumbass. I have a background on, but I have my copy over there, as well as like the big whole map of the US for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I love Deadlands.
Yeah.
Ran just Wild West and stuff in general is fun. But yeah, I've run a few Deadlands things even without like the whole magic and the weird part of the Weird West, and just run as raw Western, and it actually works very well.
Oh yeah.
So it's nice. I like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then for a while there, me and Victor Gorchev were playing in a game that John TGG rather,
yep,
was running for us. That was like Hong Kong action movies, and that was a ton of fun.
Hell yeah, the John Woo bullshit's great.
Yep, he was basically Vic was basically playing Chow Yun Fat, and I was basically playing Max Payne, and it was.
Have you ever played any of the old Interlock games, or even just Interlock itself?
I haven't.
Oh boy, I think you would like that system, because it's similar-ish to Sway, but basically you do all your rolls and everything, so you have a number of like basically action points more or less, and you can spend them on just doing random cool shit throughout your turn, and combat makes it fun. I think Mechton does use Interlock. Shane, I think you're correct in that. I think my most recent thing with it was literally just the Interlock core rules, because I played a one shot with them. I'm trying to remember when it was. It was a few months ago, but it was like someone was using Interlock core, and it was a God, I'm trying to remember. I think it was pretty much just like Escape from LA, more or less.
Nice.
But yeah, fun stuff. Yeah, slow-mo jump firing dual wield, all dove slap by in the background. Exactly.
Yeah. Dundermoose, the first combat encounter was in a bar in Hong Kong, and I had my character dive across the bar firing two Berettas. They're like penalties to hit because you're diving and firing two Berettas, but I made sure to immediately attempt that as soon as combat kicked off. So yes, that's what we were doing in SWADE.
Yeah, and SWADE can also get you just crazy bullshit sometimes.
Yes.
There was a Deadlands thing a while back I was running as well. A guy was a bounty hunter, but he was basically a blind sniper, which that was something. I don't remember what all he took for it, but he was able to hit like at least half the time. I'm just like, this is stupid. But penalties hit charisma bonus with lays. Hell yeah. SWADE in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. And,
But yeah.
and SWADE also, you'll like roll one attack and then your dice keep exploding. So it's basically you fired from the hip and then shot someone in the middle of the head.
Dundermoose, his name was literally Blind Jim, was his character's name. He got a bounty on him in Deseret, so that was something.
Yep.
Yeah, Book of Eli had blind gunfires.
Mm-hmm.
Book of Eli is an underrated movie, in my opinion.
It's a fantastic movie.
Yep.
It was like modern necessities before modern necessities.
Hear that, Vic? Get the license.
No, that man, that movie is amazing. I love that movie.
It came out a while ago too, I think.
I was in high school when it came out, I'm pretty sure. So that's been over 10 years now.
Oh God, I would have been in middle school. Okay. But yeah.
You're only like a year and change younger than me. So let's see. The Book of Eli.
When did that come out? I'm Googling this now. Hold on.
It came out in 2010. So I'd have been in 8th grade.
Yeah, I would have been 7th grade. So yeah, middle school. But yeah, great movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been reading through that. There's also the whole period of time of me being obsessed with Zero E because of White Box.
Yep.
Still kind of am, just because it's interesting. Parsing the castle construction table made me lose all of my sanity. I know John appreciates it, so whatever.
Yep.
Damn kids. Malachi, just grow hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay. I'm joining you there in not long.
I'm holding on.
Lucky.
But yeah, we are unfortunately running out of time, but we'll definitely have to bring you back on, especially to do a Traveler focused episode. I think that'd be real fun to like go through a kind of recommended starting book, both for my benefit and for the benefit of people out there who've also not tried Traveler yet. So
let the tism reign. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. We're gonna shake up and open the tism can.
Oh boy. Time to get all the Mark Miller DVDs. I still love that he sends them as DVDs from his jank GeoCities site. It's amazing to me.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Poncho, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a lot of fun. This is a great conversation.
Thank you for having me on.
All right. And next week, again, I'm not sure what we'll be doing next week. I'm kind of taking these things as they come these days just to kind of see who wants to be on. At some point this month, Wonky will be back. He's going to be on a lot more regularly. He's going to be like once a month on Rollin Bones now. So, he and I will be talking about updates on our project. Just kind of design talk is what Wonky and I are going to be doing. But, I'll have more guests like Poncho, who are compatriots on Basic Experts Gilded server. Hell, Basic Experts probably going to be on before too awful long. Vic will be back. I'll probably bring Harmony on again for a live Ginger report. But until next week, whether you roll one, God, I've been doing this long enough. You'd think I'd have my outro down by now. But whether you rolled a 1 or a 20, I'm so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard, and I will see you guys next time.